Good evening, everyone. We are continuing on our little study in the book of Hosea, or we call it Hosea in the Hebrew. And we ended yesterday in verse 9. The reason we did that was because the Hebrew Bible actually ends there and continues on chapter 2 in verse 10 of the English Bible. And so we're following the Hebrew structure and where they cut off in the paragraphs. Now, just a quick recap of yesterday when we were speaking about the vision. And so we said that there were two particular views. One is that this whole thing is actually a narrative of a vision, and two, the orthodox or the what we call the traditional view is actually something more literal, meaning Hosea actually executed and did all the actions. And so one of the reasons why we said that it was a narrative of a vision is also in the language itself, and we shall see it today as well, that it is actually expressed in the third person, that Hosea is talking about himself in the third person using the word he rather than the word I. When it comes to chapter 3 onwards, he uses I. And so that's one of those reasons why we are saying that the narrative of this entire vision in chapter 1 and 2 is actually written in the third person, and Hosea is part of that narrative. When it comes to this, we also need to remember yesterday we had talked about three sons, one wife, Gomer, that gave birth to three sons, three children, Jezreel, Lo Ruhamah, and Lo Ami. And each of these, we have said that it was the names that God was using to actually communicate the seriousness of his anger towards particularly the northern kingdom, the kingdom called Israel. And so let's begin in Hosea chapter 2, verse 1. Remember, we are talking about the northern kingdom, also called Israel. The southern kingdom is called Judah. And so the large part of the kingdom, when it split after Solomon, went to the north. That's what we commonly call the 10 tribes or the 10 northern tribes. And so whenever it refers to Israel right now, and the primary audience of the book of Hosea is really the northern kingdom. But occasionally we do read of the southern kingdom being mentioned. And so we need to be mindful of this. So Hosea chapter 2, verse 1. Hosea chapter 2, verse 1 is really in the English Bible, chapter 1, verse 10. And so it says, yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. And we need to break this down a little bit. First of all, in terms of number, this is literally the concept of a count, the counting of the heads. It is to tell us that this count is with regards to the sons of Israel. And this will be the northern kingdom. Now remember, in the anger of God, God is saying that he will visit the house of Yehu and bring upon them the end of the kingdom. That would be Jezreel. And then God says that the daughter is named Lo Ruhamah, that God will not forgive them. And so the end of the kingdom will also see that God is going to ignore them and not going to care about them in terms of what they have committed against God. Lo Ruhamah. Then God will inflict upon them the ultimate judgment. And then God says, Lo Ami, meaning God says, you are no longer my people. And when that is said, God is ultimately saying, I really don't care. Now, I had also expressed that we need to really look at Jeremiah chapter 3 in parallel, where God expressed it in different ways to the northern kingdom and then to the southern kingdom. But now we're in the book of Hosea, so let's focus on the book of Hosea. The sons of Israel would be the northern kingdom right here, right? The northern kingdom. And God says, you are not my people, but they will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. Now, this is an A and a B. Sand of the sea is also equivalent to the phrase stars of the sky. It is really talking about innumerable, right? This would be the emphasis. Innumerable. Cannot be counted. Now, what does that mean? It means that they are beyond a physical count. It doesn't mean that there are so many people from the sons of Israel that it will be impossible to count. So there is a certain number that beyond which it is really, really very difficult to count. So we are told in the promise to Abraham that his descendants would be like the stars in the sky. It's like the sand on the seashore. And so these are the euphemism, the illustration that is going to be made to the descendants of Abraham. And so when they left Egypt, they are said to be like the stars in the sky. Deuteronomy chapter 1. Like the sand of the sea, they are now innumerable. Because when they went into Egypt, they were 70. When they left Egypt, they were 600,000 of men 20 years and above. And so they are innumerable. And that's the meaning of this expression. And then it says in the place. In the place, I would say, of the book of Hosea. That would be in Hosea chapter 1 verse 9, where it is said to them, you are not my people. Now this word, not my people, literally, God never said that, did he? Well, we don't read it in chapter 1 verse 9. It literally tells us that God says, you are Lo Ami. The son's name is Lo Ami. And so this is Lo Ami. So we need to realize that where it is said to them, you are Lo Ami, it will be said to them, who is them. Now we need to link all this up. This would be the sons of Israel. Where it is said, you are Lo Ami, not my people, it will be said that you are the sons of the living God. The sons of the living God The sons, meaning these sons of the living God, is a very important expression because prostitution or harlotry, remember, harlotry has to do with idolatry. It's the same word that's being used, which means that they are going after pagan gods. And we know that pagan gods are expressed in the book of Deuteronomy as those that has no life. They cannot give you laws, and they cannot bless you, and they cannot speak to you. But here, the sons of the living God is described that Jehovah, your God, is alive. He speaks, he acts, and he judges. And thereby, they are now going to be re-established in their relationship with God. Now, yesterday I had mentioned that when God said, Lo Ami, God is actually severing that relationship. In Jeremiah chapter 3, it's like giving them a bill of divorcement. It is that bad. God is that angry. And God did that to the northern kingdom. But God didn't do it to the southern kingdom. And that is also because we have to remember in the southern kingdom, it will be 2 Samuel chapter 7. And that would be the promise to David and his descendants and those after him that God will chastise them as a father to a son. And hence we see that God is dealing with the northern kingdom very differently from the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is no forgiveness. You are not my people. And then when it came to Hosea chapter 2 verse 1 or Hosea chapter 1 verse 10, God says, well, it will come to a time where you will be innumerable, like the sand on the sea, and we are going to call you sons of the living God. And so God is saying that it will come one full circle that God will acknowledge you once again, right? Once again. In Hosea chapter 2, verse 2, and it says, and the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together. They will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up from the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Right? Let's break this down. In verse 1 or in chapter 1, verse 10, we have the sons of Israel. Notice this is the northern kingdom. The sons of Judah, the southern kingdom. Notice the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together. Now, the word gathered, literally, they are going to be collected, which implies that both of them will be dispersed. Or how should you say? Distributed all over the world. But the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel are treated differently. As you notice, the sons of Israel are going to be called Lo Ruchama, no forgiveness. But the sons of Judah, yes, God will forgive them and save them with his mighty arm, not by bows and arrows and swords and horses and horsemen. Right? We've read that very clearly in verse 7, chapter 1. But in this verse, which is also 1 verse 11, they are also going to be scattered. Well, that would be a better word too, right? Scattered. The northern kingdom will be scattered first. And God says, Lo Ami. And God doesn't care anymore. And they will be just gone. But the sons of Judah, God will protect. And yet, eventually, there will come a point in time, and it's not mentioned in Hosea, that the sons of Judah are also scattered. And so God says they will be both the houses, Judah and Israel, will be collected once again. We're not told how they are going to be collected, but we are told that this will be end of days. They will be collected, and they will mean the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will appoint for themselves. Now, appoint for themselves is to establish for themselves one leader, and they call this the Mashiach, or the Messiah. This one leader, and I think we can read this in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37 as well. And so they are going to appoint one leader, and they will go up from the land. What land? The land of Israel, the promised land. For great will be the day of Jezreel, that God will sow. And then say to your brothers. Now, this is a bit challenging in the English. This should be translated, you all. Say to your brothers. Who is you all? You all will be the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel, or rather, it should be the sons of Israel. Say to your brothers. So, Ami and Ruhamah, remember, these were the times when God says, you're Lo Ami, not my people, and you are also Lo Ruhamah. This was said to Israel, right? It was said to Israel. And so you all would be Israel. Say to your brothers and your sisters that it's no longer Lo Ami, it's just Ami. There is no longer Lo Ruhamah, it is Ruhamah, which means that the judgment is reversed. That God will take them back as God's people. And God will forgive. So what happens is this. Say to your brothers and your sisters, Ruhamah. So Ami and Ruhamah, meaning, when would God take you back and God forgive you? When they repent. When they go back to God's words. Now, in the Jewish way, they would say this would be the Torah, right? They go back to the Torah, and God will forgive them, and God will gather them back in that one day. As long as they do not focus on the Torah, on God, they cannot be reunited. And so one of the things that we see as implied from the text is that God is a God who is consistent with his character. When he has punished them, and you can go and read Jeremiah chapter 3, and Jeremiah chapter 3 tells the northern kingdom, turn back, come back to God. And coming back to God really means to take God at his word, take God as what he has instructed, and accept God as the true and living God, and thereby they will become sons of the living God. It is not unconditional, it is conditional. And so verse 3 says, say to your brothers, Israel, Ami. Say to your sisters, Ruhamah. God will take you back. God will forgive you. You will become God's people once again when we return to God. And so the narrative is not so much as Hosea's wife and children, it is very much the messaging that comes through the wife and children. This verse, chapter 2, verse 4, is really chapter 2, verse 1. Right? And so from here on, we're in chapter 2. It says, contend with your mother, contend, for she is not my wife, whose wife, and I am not her husband. Who is I? Let her put away her harlotry from her face and her adultery from between her breasts. So contend means to argue. Argue with your mother. Who is your mother? That's Lo Ami and Lo Ruchama. That would be Gomer. So notice Gomer is really an illustration, right? Is an illustration. Contend with your mother. Contend. Go and fight with her, right? Go and fight with her. Oh, sorry. This is verse 2. So go and fight with her. And essentially, this is about strive with her. Argue with her, your mother, Gomer. And who is Gomer representing? Well, the motherland, the mother nation. Right? The children is Lo Ami and Lo Ruhama and Jezreel. And so this is a picture of Israel. So Gomer is a picture of Israel. For she is not my wife, and it is now a narrative of God's wife. And I, Jehovah, is not her husband. So what is happening here? So understand, Israel, and this is very much the Israel as a northern kingdom, and also compare with Jeremiah chapter 3. What do you mean she's not my wife? And so we read in Jeremiah chapter 3 that God divorced Israel. And so this statement should also be viewed as how angry God was with Israel. It says, I don't want to be your husband. And this word husband here is man. This is a very affectionate term. A woman, as we call wife, and man, as we call husband, comes from the word ish and isha, and it's a very intimate expression of a relationship. And so God says, I am not interested. Why am I divorcing you that you're no longer my wife? It's because of harlotry. She is a woman of harlotry. The harlotry literally means idolatry. And so the word harlotry in chapter 1 and 2 is a euphemism of idolatry. And this one is an A and a B. Let her put away her harlotry from her face and her breasts, because she is idolatrous. Now, the northern kingdom is idolatrous, and Jeremiah chapter 3 also tells us that Judah was also like that, but Judah was hiding. Hosea chapter 2 verse 5. The warning is this: if you do not put away, now put away means turn away. Turn away. If you do not turn away, God says what? I will strip her naked. I will expose her as the day she was born. The day she was born and naked is about being helpless. And so what is being helpless? This is a euphemism as in the days of Egypt. There's nothing they can do about it. And the nation of Israel came out from Egypt. It will be at a time where you know nothing, you have nothing, and God was not with you. And it goes on to say, I will also make her like a wilderness. make her like a desert land, slay her with thirst. If you notice, this is in the wilderness. 40 years. Interestingly, you'll find that the lessons that God gives are always anchored on the book of Exodus. That God is going to take them away from Egypt, rescue them, redeem them, bring them out to the promised land, and yet they disobeyed and they had to thirst in the desert. And so that would be the picture. If you don't, you will go back to where you first started with nothing. That is the warnings here. And so right now, from Hosea 2:4 and 2:5, these are literally warnings to Israel, the northern kingdom. Because if you do not turn back, there will be nothing left of you. Verse 6. Also, I will have no compassion on her children, because they are children of harlotry. So understand this. This is with reference to chapter 1, verse 2. Take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, which is a real reference to what's happening over the years from Gomer to Jezreel to Lo Ruhamah to Lo Ami. There is a period of time, as you can see. All these takes time. And God has always taught us a lesson that whenever God gives a warning, and we are seeing very serious warnings, and warnings come not because God wants to destroy them or judge them. God wants them to repent. God says, I will have no compassion. Lo Arham, no compassion on her children. Why? God will not forgive them. And once God will not forgive them, it would be the end. It will be the end. And so for their mother, and this is with reference to Gomer, and notice, Gomer is now taken as an illustration. She played the harlot. What do you mean played the harlot? Well, this idea of playing the harlot in verse 7 says that she is practicing as a harlot. That's what it means. She went to sell herself, right? For their mother has played the harlot. Now notice, all of this is not really the person. All of this is given as a euphemism in the narrative, equating to Israel. She conceived them and acted shamefully as a harlot, shameful. And she said, I will go after my lovers who give me my bread, my water, my wool, my flax, my oil, my drink. What does this mean? Fed me, covered me, and made me satisfied. Now, my lovers would be those who provided for her, right? Provided for her. Understand this. Whenever you talk about lovers here, well, these are the ones who love her, right? Who loved her. Now, we will come back to this because later on, it talks about the word ahav, right? Ahav, which is the Hebrew word for love. And the word love is about providing, caring. And that is what lovers are here referring to. These are lovers who not only loved her physically, but provided for her. Next verse 8. Therefore, behold, this is God, Jehovah, I will hedge up her way with thorns. I will build a wall against her so she cannot find her paths. This is an A and a B. What does it mean? It means that she is going down the road. She is looking for her way, and God is going to block her. Now, this is an important aspect. God is going to block her with a wall. God is going to block her with thorns, thorn bushes with thorns. And so this is the picture. If bushes have thorns, she cannot move forward and her path is stopped. That is the imagery. So I will stop her in her tracks. And that's what it means. Stop her in her tracks. She will pursue her lovers, those who would provide for her, but she will not overtake them. She will seek their lovers, but will not find them. What does this mean? It means this: her lovers, understand this, and them, these are the same, will not overtake them, will not find them, means this: they will go to those who provide aid to Israel, and she will not receive it. That's what it means, right? She will not receive it. She will ask from the pagan gods, they will ask from their pagan lovers, and these will be the nations that really go after pagan idolatry. And so this is what it means. She will chase after these lovers, and she will not overtake them. She will not find them. She will not get to a point where she will be provided for. In fact, what's going to happen is these same lovers, Egypt, Assyria, right? Egypt, Assyria, will go against them and will destroy them. Next phrase, she will say, I will go back to my first husband, for it was better for me then than now. Now, this word here, my first husband, would be my first man. This is the husband of her youth. We read some of these from the book of Malachi as well. My first husband. And so what happened is the picture of Gomer, which is Israel, right? First married to God, divorced, and then went after lovers, and then decide that actually it's no fun anymore and she wants to come back to God. This is the first man. This is a very imagery-driven relationship picture. And Israel says, hey, it is better for me to go back to Jehovah than to Egypt and Assyria. Verse 10, for she does not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the new wine, the oil, and lavished her with silver, gold, which they use for Baal. So she is Israel, does not know that it was I, Jehovah, who gave her. God gave the grain, the wine, the oil, the silver, the gold, and all this is a gift from God as part of the promised land. And they eventually took these gifts and used it for Baal. Now notice Baal means two things. Baal means master. Baal will also mean the name of the pagan god. And so this would mean the pagan god, right? They use it for someone else, which means that they have now ignored God. That's what it means. And so God says in the book of Leviticus, if you do that, I will take back my grain at harvest time, my new wine in its season. I will also take away my wool, my flax, given to cover her nakedness. So what does this mean? It means this. God says, this God says, I will take my grain at harvest and my new wine in the season when there is grapes. Remember, Jezreel means God will sow. And God has given them a lot. But at the end of this, God will harvest. And when God harvests, God will judge. And there will be no more grain, no more new wine, no more wool, no more flax. And this is for covering, by the way. And since that's the case, what will happen to Israel? Israel will be naked. That's what it means, that God will no longer provide for her. Verse 12. Then I will uncover her lewdness. I would put this in brackets, right? This means the woman's shame, right? The woman's lewdness, the woman's shame. I think that would be an easier word to use. And it says God will uncover her in the sight of her lovers, and no one will rescue her out of my hand. Now, this is a very key expression. I will uncover her lewdness. This is a euphemism for the woman's shame, the woman's sexual part, which is to be covered. And God says, I will take back the flax, I will take back the wool, and she will be uncovered in the sight of her lovers. This will be Egypt and Assyria. And God says, no one will save her out of my hand. And God is using Egypt and Assyria to take them away and to punish them. And so this is God's ultimate judgment. Now we see this in the hand of the king of Assyria. And that God used this to completely take away Israel, the northern kingdom. So these are all very, very picturesque words, very imagery-driven words to describe how angry God is because she is practicing idolatry. And so I will also put an end to all her gaiety. Now, what do you mean by gaiety? These are what we call expressions of joy. Her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her festal assemblies, everything she does with regards to God's appointments. So we need to ask this question: is God's appointments extremely important? Yes, but not as important as their conduct before God. If their conduct before God is unruly and lewd, and she goes after her lovers. God says, I really don't care about the appointments. I really don't care about you anymore. And so God says, Lo Ami. That's how it's going to end. That's how it's going to end. And so God now describes what he is going to do. He says, I will destroy her vines, her fig trees, of which she says, hey, these are my payment, my wages, which my lovers have given me. Well, this is really given by God. And so God says, I will make them a forest into an unmanaged land. And the beasts of the field will devour them. And so what basically is being said is that this land that this is being tended, will become an untenable land, which means that nobody will be taking care of the land, and animals will come and they become a jungle. That's verse 14. Verse 15, and I will punish her for the days of the Baals. Now notice, why do you call it Baals? Now I would like to use this word, Baalim. It is plural for Baal. And so it is not Baals as a name. There's no name of a god called Baals. These are all pagan idols or masters. And that is what she used to offer sacrifices to them, adorn herself with earrings, jewelry, follow her lovers so that she forgot me. So the sin of idolatry is literally down to the baseline, forgot God, right? Forgot God. This literally tells us that they walk after them with the earrings all dressed up, right? Pagan dressing. And then they followed after the lovers and they forgot me, declares the Lord. This is a very important word. God is speaking. Now, albeit in a vision, they forgot me. Forgot me means what? The word forgot is ignore. Ignored God, right? They misplaced the knowledge of God. And later on, when we say that that Hosea would mention those famous lines, for my people is destroyed for lack of knowledge, it is this. They misplaced the knowledge of God. They forgot about God. Verse 16. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, I will seduce her, bring her into the wilderness and speak to her kindly. And this will be take them away from the land. Where? The wilderness. And there I will give her vineyards in the valley of Achor as a door of hope, and she will sing there in the days of her youth. What is the days of her youth? When the time they were in Egypt, right? Before they came out to the promised land, as in the days when she came out from the land of Egypt. This days of her youth is in the land of Egypt. So these are A and B. It's talking about go back to the start. That they will be away from the land. They will be away from God. They will not be with God. God will not be taking care of them, but they will be somewhat blessed, right? God will take care of them wherever they may be, right? That's what it says. They will go back to the start, and Egypt is a garden. And so God says, God will take care of them there, wherever there is, away from the land. Verse 18, and it will come about, now these are important words, in that day, declares the Lord. Now understand, in that day, declares the Lord. This is a declaration. God is speaking. Still in the vision. In that day means in the day where they will be brought back. We read this in the earlier part of this chapter. And that you will call me Ishi, man or husband. And you will no longer call me Baali, that this is master. Not in the house yet. Because they're not back in the land. When they're not back in the land, they are calling God master. They don't know God in this personal way. But when the time they are brought back, they will know God as husband. Ishi, my man, right? Ishi. That is what this verse actually means. They will call God my man. Actually, Ishi is my man. Let me just put it down. My man or my husband. And they will not call me Baali, my master. Right? Now, some people think that, well, these people have started to call Jehovah as Baal. Not true. So none of this is in the text. So the text is actually quite clear. For I will remove the names of the Baals. Now understand, Baals is Baalim. From her mouth, so that they will be mentioned by their names no more. They is Israel. Will be mentioned by the Baalim no more, right? By their names that Baalim knows them of. Verse 20, in that day, remember what day? The day that they return. I will also make a covenant for them with the beasts of the fields, with the birds of the sky, the creeping things of the ground. These are the things that God made. Right? Genesis chapter 1. And I will abolish the bow, the sword, and war from the land, and I will make them lie down in safety. I think this one you can go back and read Isaiah chapter 2, where swords will be changed to plowshares. This is the end times when they return to the land. The land will be, well, we could say flowing with milk and honey again. Right? There will be no more wars. They don't have to worry in that day. And I will betroth you to me forever. Now, forever. What do you mean by forever? Forever means olam, for a long, long time now, right? Betroth. The word betrothed here is that you are going to be engaged to me to be married. To be married, right? Betrothed you to me forever. And this will be God, right? Israel and God. And I will betroth youth to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness, in compassion. So all of these, A, B, C, and D, these are the character of God. It would be also the character of the relationship with God. It will be the character of Israel, right? The wives. And so I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, something that is true and firm. Then you will understand this. Know the Lord. From forgetting to go back to knowing God, experiencing God. Verse 23, it will come about in that day, again, that would be the end days, that I will respond, declares the Lord. I will respond to the heavens, and they will respond to the earth. Now understand this, the idea of heaven and earth, as in Genesis 1:1, these are the witnesses of God, and they will respond. So how will they respond? The earth will respond to the grain, wine, oil, as in olive, and they will respond to Jezreel. Jezreel is the sowing. The responding is the reaping. They will be great harvest. Verse 25, and I will sow for her, for myself in the land. I will also have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. What does that mean? This is God in the land of Israel, where they have been taken away. They'll be brought back again. I will have compassion on her who have not obtained compassion. Remember, lo ruhama, to become ruhama, that God will forgive. And then the next phrase is where we will end. And I will say to those who were not my people, what is that? That would be lo ami. And God will say, you are my people. And they will become ami. So all of this will happen in the end days, right? And then they will say, you are my God. Now, the last verse here says, they will say, you are Elohai. This is the word. They will say, my God, Elohai. This would literally mean, my God. And this would be an acknowledgement of God. Because now they are Muhammad, they are Ami, and this is an acknowledgement of God. Now, back in the book of Ezekiel of the New Covenant, where they will have a new covenant made by God to the house of Israel and the house of Judah, this whole thing is playing out. That God says you will no longer need to be taught the law of God, the Torah. You will know, you will remember me. Before, you have forgotten me. Now you will remember me, and this would be the end days. In the days of the Messianic age. And that will be the future end days. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.